2020 gave us Tiger King, and now, in the year 2021, we have Squid Game. Both are kind of memes, both got a lot of social media buzz, and there's one major difference between the two, apart from the fact that Squid Game is a fictional series and not a docuseries. The biggest difference between the two meme shows of the past 2 years is that, well, Squid Game is actually good. So, there's that. Welcome back, everybody.
Differently.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you are all doing well. I would like to very quickly apologize for the brief hiatus. I have been working on a few other projects, all of which you will see very, very soon. So that has been the reason for my absence. However, during times such as these, when there is a big show or movie that has really captured the pop cultural zeitgeist, I must come out of hiding to discuss it because clearly my opinion matters, obviously. So Squid Game is the latest Netflix original series to take the world by storm, and unlike so many before it, this show actually deserves it. Squid Game is a Korean-made television series, and I am unfamiliar with both the creator and all of the performers, and I do not want to butcher the pronunciation for any of those actors, so I will be referring to the characters as the following. Main character guy, shady college guy, old man, Middle Eastern man, and young woman. So, the general premise of Squid Game is a little bit of Hunger Games and a little bit of The Most Dangerous Game. So, the basic premise of this show is a bunch of people are gathered who, for one reason or another, are in a lot of debt, and they play a bunch of children's games for a chance to win a large cash prize. However, all of these games come with a twist that you are not only playing for a chance to win the money, but you are playing for survival. Because the loser of all these games dies. And there isn't just one loser. Anybody who fails to complete the game or finish the task or accomplish whatever the goal may be for that specific game is murdered in cold blood. And there are definitely a lot of elements to this show that I think are very unique because it's executed in a way that I haven't necessarily seen before. There is one game specifically in the very first episode that I find to be quite unsettling, not necessarily because of the general concept, but because of the way it's executed and because of the framing of the device with which this game is carried out. There is a lot of uncanny elements to Squid Game, and I think when it leans on those uncanny elements, that's when it really shines, because some of this show does feel familiar, and it can feel like a bit of a retread in terms of the concept, but it has just enough to keep it elevated, and thankfully the premise is just strong enough for a long enough amount of time for the audience to become invested in what truly matters, which is the characters that are in this show. And the main character of this show is really a guy that is down on his luck, he's had a hard time, and really what grounds him throughout this entire season is his connection to his daughter and his desire to be with her. However, he can't fully support her because he's not financially stable. And so he has a good motivation to participate in these games, along with an issue that comes up later in the series involving his mother. So he has very pure intentions in terms of participating in these games. But the issue is that, as with so many other shows and movies, is things are never that easy for characters, especially when they have a very specific goal in mind. And one thing I really found myself surprised by when it comes to Squid Game is how emotionally invested I actually became in the show, in this main character, because I made the mistake of watching the first episode with the English dub, and it was a really jarring experience and kind of disorienting at times, because the audio was not in sync with the lip movements of the actors at all, and it was just absolutely distressing. So I got this weird impression that the performances were so over the top and the English voice actors were completely hamming it up, and it just didn't match with the physicality of any of the Korean performers. So I finally decided to watch it in Korean with English subtitles, and that was probably the best decision I could have made, because then the show became good, and I found myself getting invested in the real emotional through lines of this show rather than just wanting to skip to the next game. Don't get me wrong, the most interesting parts of Squid Game are without a doubt the games, some of which give this show some pretty impressive set pieces considering the budget was probably moderate at best. So Squid Game does contain a pretty interesting character piece at its center, because not only does it deal with our main character, but it deals with his relationship with the other players in this game. And there are certain twists and turns throughout the show that reveal things about these people that he's grown close to. But in particular, there is a relationship that he has with the old man that feels like the most sincere and genuine relationship in the show, and it's one that is really satisfying to see unfold. However, the problem with this is that there is the most ridiculous twist at the end of this show that I have seen in a very long time. Don't get me wrong, I was surprised, but I don't think it necessarily worked. So, spoiler warning for those of you that actually care about spoilers in the year 2021, because quite frankly I don't think they're a big deal. So at the end of the show, it's revealed that the old man was actually the host of these games all along, and it just kind of undermines everything that the main character and the old man went through in terms of their relationship and growing as people and learning to trust one another. It just feels weird because it doesn't actually recontextualize any of the other characters or their actions throughout the show. It was seriously just the old man hosting these games because he wanted to feel alive before he died due to the tumor that was metastasizing in his brain. And this just felt like a very weird narrative device, because it doesn't actually change anything throughout the show, and it also doesn't necessarily alter the audience's perception of the old man. One thing I will say about Squid Game is it does do a good job of setting up a very traditional antagonist with this wannabe Korean gangster that has an extremely dumb face tattoo, and actually pulling the rug out from underneath us by killing him off in the second to last episode. And it is revealed that, surprise, it is actually the shady college guy, that is the real antagonist of the show. And there is a rivalry between him and the main character of the show that is explored throughout the series, but it's never the center of the show. It's heavily implied and it's really easy to read, but he is never set up as the real antagonist of the show. So when he makes that turn to being the genuine villain of Squid Game, it is a surprising one, but it is also one that the audience definitely saw coming if they were paying attention. Now, in my opinion, the most interesting character in this show was without a doubt the young woman, because she was actually a little bit more nuanced than the main character. I felt like she had a little bit more three-dimensionality to her, not only in terms of her motivations, because her allegiances seemed to keep changing until around the 4th or 5th episode in this first season, but her motivation and her desire to just keep to herself and not really form any alliances throughout these games really gives her character an air of mystery that I think just worked really well with the general mystery of why are these games being held in the first place. And we sort of get an answer with the twist involving the old man, and we also sort of get an answer with these extremely weird, off-putting, and goofy American rich guys that come to watch the games wearing these animal masks. It's very unsettling and creepy, and they're all pervs. So in other words, they're white men from America. But there are themes in this show that have a lot to do with social commentary, and it's not nuanced, it's not subtle, but they're effective. It's pretty clear that Squid Game is making a commentary about how we treat the poor, not only in the United States and not only in Korea, because that's where the show takes place, but how we treat the impoverished as a human race and how we treat other human beings. We dehumanize each other, and that is really what Squid Game is about. It is about taking these elements of our society and really just giving them a personification in terms of creating these games that are watched by the powerful elite as they watch the lower class kill each other, fight, bleed, suffer, and hurt for their own amusement. It is a clear commentary about how we dehumanize each other as human beings, how we fail to recognize our shared humanity. And on the surface, you would think that this humanity that we all share should transcend race, gender, sexuality. But that isn't the world we live in, and it's pretty clear what Squid Game is trying to say, that we need to have more empathy for each other, and I think that comes across very well in terms of the main character's arc throughout this series. He does undergo a change. Throughout the show, he has largely been selfish and lazy, but he learns to have more compassion as he develops a bond, not just with the old man, but with the young woman as well. And there is a really heartbreaking scene in the penultimate episode of this show that the main character shares with this young woman that really, I think, brings this emotional element of the show to the forefront, and it really makes it clear what the show is actually about. It's not about the games, it's about the people. And I think that's why I ended up liking this show, because for the first 3 or 4 episodes, I found myself a little bit on the fence. I wasn't completely sold. There were certainly interesting aspects of Squid Game, 100%. but I didn't find myself completely immersed in the show the way that others did. Somebody recommended the show to me and said it was the best thing that Netflix has done since The Queen's Gambit. And I loved The Queen's Gambit. I don't agree with that statement. I still don't, but I can say that I walked away from Squid Game very much enjoying the show. And that was surprising to me. Now, that's not to say it's perfect. I do think the show has its obvious issues, the biggest of which being that it is extremely front-loaded. A lot of the most important character beats and exciting set pieces happen in the first 3 episodes, and as a result, the rest of the series can feel like it is dragging on just a little bit too much. And secondly, there are a couple of subplots that are never resolved, and they also don't lead to anything either. There is one subplot involving a detective that has managed to infiltrate these games, and I do think that was the one interesting subplot this show had, but again, it's not necessarily elaborated on, and the way that it's tied up makes me feel like there is a lot of opportunity to continue that storyline in a season 2. And that brings me to one of the biggest discussions surrounding Squid Game. The showrunner and creator of this show wrote the script back in 2008 and waited until 2020 to be able to make this. And he said that he did not write it with a season 2 in mind. I don't believe him. I don't believe him because there are so many elements of this show that sets itself up for a season 2, for some kind of a sequel, that I find it hard to believe that a lot of these decisions that were made and a lot of these story beats were not highly intentional, because it feels like they were. So, regardless of whether or not Squid Game does get a season 2, I can say that it is definitely worth the hype. And one last thing I want to mention is that we often just think of Hollywood as the big powerhouse when it comes to filmmaking, and deservedly so. They are the biggest name. America does produce the most amount of quality films and television in any given year. But Korea has really proven themselves to be a worthwhile and I really think respectable overseas industry when it comes to filmmaking, because you have movies like Train to Busan, Parasite, and then you have a show like Squid Game, and to me, it appears that South Korea is really emerging as a force to be reckoned with. So I just want to say, really, just a job well done to everyone that has worked on this show, because it really is unique, and it is fascinating, if flawed. I don't think the show quite stuck the landing for me, because I had a big issue with that twist involving the old man, but I also think that there were some other plot threads in the series that either just weren't resolved in a satisfactory manner or were just handled a little bit clumsily. So, overall, I did enjoy Squid Game. I think it's unique, and I think it is absolutely worth your time. I do think it is a little front-loaded, and it failed to stick the landing for me. I really did not care for the finale, but the finale was not enough to detract from my enjoyment from the rest of the show, which I think is a testament to the show's quality, and that should say enough about it. I enjoyed Squid Game. It's unique, and the unique qualities that it does have, and when those unique qualities are put at the forefront, very much carry this show and separate it from other things that Netflix has done. Would I say it's the best show Netflix has ever made? No. But it's definitely one of the better ones. and I highly recommend it to all of you. And I would recommend watching the show in Korean with the English subtitles, because the English dub does not do any of those performers justice in the slightest. The show was well written, well directed, well made. The production design was interesting. The costumes were obviously really captivating, and I imagine that everyone is going to be walking around in a red jumpsuit and a black mask on Halloween, so that's going to get annoying real fast. But I hope that everyone is doing well, staying safe and healthy. I hope the video finds you well, and again, I apologize for the brief hiatus, but I can promise you that my absence has been due to a very strong purpose, and it's something that I hope you will all take the time to engage with when I unleash it to the world. So, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. Good night, and may your heart be your guiding key.